Oh my goodness. Oh, I wore the shirt just
There's
special.
two
Here,
chairs right
turn that a little bit that way.
Come on.
It shows me too
Oh,
much.
isn't that cool?
Yeah, there's a nice one.
Sit here, I'll take yours off.
The necklace.
Yeah, no, it's a lot there.
You're good.
Wisdom to know the difference. Yes.
What's the matter, Connie?
Your mom just gave you the glare.
Yeah.
Okay,
Got
so
the
now
look.
we're ready. Is he here?
See, now we have a row.
Pictures of his way on.
Let's see. Let's Ruth again.
There
she is. And I left my bookmark in my Bible.
What are we doing up there?
Are we live?
Okay, we're down to zero.
Down to zero.
We started with 2, we're down to 0. Sam, it's all your fault. They logged on, saw you right away, and they went right off.
I'm scared.
Oh, that's
That's
scary.
okay. No
Hi,
worries.
Connie.
Oh, Sam, that's good.
I'll be ready. Okay, I'm ready for watching YouTube TV, okay? So Ray should be logging on. Beth is ready. Beth is waiting. All right. Let's open with prayer. And then we can start with the book of Ruth. Let's pray. Father, we quiet our hearts tonight, opening your word, asking that you would open our hearts and our minds. We ask, Lord, that you would bless us with your presence as we discuss Ruth and as we discuss community, specifically the church community. We just pray that you would give us insight and help us to be that community, to lift up and encourage one another. And we just thank you for blessing us with your word, with the freedom to meet like we are tonight, and that our group is growing. And we love you. We love studying your word, which helps us to know you even more. So bless our time together, Lord, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So before we get into Ruth, and since our study is on community, does anybody here to give witness tonight on how community has been an encouragement to you this last week in any way? I have some things I've witnessed, but I'll give you all a chance to share first. Is my question clear? Do you understand what I mean by that?
Mine might go back more than just a week,
Okay.
but when I came to the church as a lost soul, there were some members that stepped up, gave me the Bible, and helped for me to regain and build my relationship with God.
Great.
So
I should
It's
say
a little
that
bit
to
of the
last,
church.
because I don't think anybody can top that.
a little bit of the church coming together to help somebody. So
Yes.
it's not a competition.
Yeah,
You don't have to top it.
I was encouraged. You can't hear who? Are you deaf in your left ear or
Mhm.
both?
Especially the right.
Okay. I was encouraged Sunday morning to see that Selena had in her hot little hands a new book called Women of the Bible that somebody generously gave her.
Yes.
That to me, that's an example of community, how we are there to encourage one another, to help one another. And that's just a practical way where we see, a way that we can encourage somebody. So I was encouraged to see that.
That's what I was gonna say, but thanks.
Oh. There's probably other ways.
That was.
Yeah.
Joy to say it to you. He was talking about someone in the church gave Selena.
Yeah, I got.
Uh-oh, what happened?
I didn't
Uh-oh.
understand. I
Uh-oh.
didn't understand
What
her
in the
answer.
world?
I like that truck.
I know.
That's only in style nowadays.
I
that
love it.
red truck with the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
This has just been a day.
I don't know.
I
the
don't know.
cameras set
Somebody
up.
was saying it was the week.
What did
Just
you
like
say,
that.
Selena? I couldn't hear what you said.
When?
It's still there.
Did you say something about after they give the book and he said that encouraged him and you said something?
She said she
Keep
was
coming
gonna
and
say
going.
that.
I was gonna say what Darwin said. but I
Oh,
was
that's awesome.
back home.
Pay attention.
Uh-oh. You're getting that look.
Okay.
Means number 5, child call.
Okay.
Yeah. That'd be Ed. My calculation is correct. Any other ways we saw anybody else experience community or was blessed by community this week?
I was encouraged by something Sam posted on Facebook today. It was a good read about one of the number one commands that we have is do not fear. You know, it's fitting. I enjoyed it.
I listened to
It was good.
I listened to a podcast today, and the gentleman there was talking about, and I'll probably incorporate some of this in a message at the end of the month, but Deuteronomy 22:11, I think, and it talks about in the Hebrew. It talks about the King James uses the word cleave, and in Hebrew that literally means glue oneself to, and the idea there is to glue ourselves to God, to attach to God, and that relationship in attachment. And the thought, if you travel down with that, is
22.
that fear really never goes away. We can't make fear go away. But if we're attached to the biggest, strongest thing there is, which is God, then that helps us to have proper perspective on fear.
Mhm.
But when we detach, then we're like Peter, right? Who began to sink until his gaze got back up, and then he was able to walk again. You know, so I just thought that was a good reminder of sometimes we try to think our way through fear or pray our way through fear, and really there's not a secret other than coming to God and staying glued to. Was I right on the reference?
You said 22:11?
Yeah, or is it 20:11?
It must be 2011, because, yeah. Unless
Or 11,
unless it has something to do with
11,
wearing a
20.
garment, different sorts of wool.
Yeah,
2011,
It's cleave.
cleave, yeah, we're looking, and it shall be that if they accept, no.
No,
Oh, well. But I know what you're talking about with the cleave.
yeah.
I think it says in the Bible 365 times, fear not.
I've read that.
That's
What does
one
it say,
for each day.
355?
Fear not.
I know personally, with all the stuff that's been going on, and Nicole knows it because I've talked to her, I'm struggling because there's so much I don't understand. I don't understand just the thinking, just what's behind everything. I don't think that way. I just don't understand it. And I'm struggling. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, I think it can be boiled down to, if my last message, I don't know if things can be really that simple. Either it's fear-based or faith-based. You know, God rules with faith, requiring those who come to him to operate in faith. You know, the devil, who's the principality of the powers of this world, this is his kingdom. How does he operate? He instills fear. So there is an agenda behind what's happening today.
That's what I'm saying. I know
Yeah.
there's an agenda, and I know it's being financed, and I know there's evil thoughts behind it. But I tried to think about it, and it's like, how does somebody think that? evil.
I know.
I can't wrap my mind around it. I don't think that way.
Right,
I never have. I don't understand.
right.
That's what I'm struggling with. I can't wrap my, and it's,
And the good thing is, we never were intended to.
well,
We were never meant to have the knowledge of evil, you know? So it is hard for us, but. Okay, so we ended Ruth chapter 1 in verse 22, which said, Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth the Moabitess, and they arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So let's pick up with chapter 2, verse 1. And Casey, why don't we start with you? If we're going to work our way through the book, we'll just keep on going, but we can pause at the end of chapter 2 and see if there's anything we want to highlight on. But let's just maybe read 5 verses, and then Vicky can read 5, and we'll just go right around the table this way.
Okay. There was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. So Ruth, the Moabitess, said to Naomi, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him, in whose sight I might find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. Then she left and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his servants who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this?
The foreman replied, she is the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She went into the field and has worked steadily from the morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So Boaz said to Ruth, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the girls. I have told the men not to touch you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled. At this time, she bowed down her face to the ground. She exclaimed, why have I found such a favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?
And Boaz answered and said to her, it has fully been reported to me all that you have done for the mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people whom you did not know before. The Lord repay your work, and a full reward be given you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. Then she said, let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me. I'm not seeing very well. And have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants. Now Boaz said to her at mealtime, come here and eat of the bread, and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed parched grain to her, and she ate and was satisfied, and kept some back. And when she rose up to the glean, Boaz commanded his young man, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her.
also let some grain from the bundles fall purposely for her. Leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until evening, and beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. Then she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw she had gleaned. So she brought out and gave to her what she had kept back after she had been satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, Where have you gleaned today, and where did you work? Blessed be the one who took notice of you. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, the man's name with whom I work today is Boaz. Then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who has not forsaken his kindness to the living and the dead. And Naomi said to her, the man is a relative of ours, one of our near kinsmen.
Then Ruth, the Moabitess, said, he also said to me, you shall stay close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with these young women, and that people do not meet you in any other field. So she stayed close by the young women of Boaz to glean until the end of barley harvest and wheat harvest, and she dwelt with her mother-in-law.
All right.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
So if we use our list of questions, we don't have to maybe re-answer the who, what, where, some of those particular. We know the where is now in Bethlehem because they have returned there, right? When, according to the story, was a harvest time, if that's kind of the time frame we're looking at. And what is it from the text that we can glean for ourselves? What does the passage teach us about God? What does it teach us about human beings? Well, if we're following this narrative story, there's quite a few things in here, I think, that teach us some things about culture of the time, some things that teach us about human nature of the time, if we read into some of the things that were said. And certainly we can also see, if we stand back and look at words, she happened to, we know that people don't just happen to, but God, puts people, orchestrates people, So it wasn't just a coincidence that she wound up in that field, and it happened to be both. God had a grander plan. But it is interesting when you read this and try to glean those questions, some of the things that jump out. So what are the things that came out to you in this chapter? One thing I guess I would like to point out and ask, some translations would say, what does yours say as far as a kinsman redeemer? What verse was that, Sam? Boaz was
20.
What is it?
Yeah, 20.
Verse 20 says,
This one says, then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who has not forsaken his kinsman. No,
It
His
goes on to say
kindness.
one of our near kinsmen.
okay, so a near kinsman. The CSV says family redeemer. What does King James say?
Says the man is near kin to us, one of our next kinsmen.
Okay, close relative. Do y'all know what that means historically?
I've never heard of a guardian redeemer.
Okay, so if you were to put that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you were to put that in today's terms, if I were to pass away, it would be one of my brother's responsibility to take Debbie as their wife and to,
Not,
well,
as long as you had children, no.
oh yeah,
If you didn't have any children.
right, which she didn't. Neither one of her
Right.
daughter-in-laws did. That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So only if you didn't have children?
Yes. And she was, it is interesting that both of her sons married, which is another thing that's interesting, but I think that doesn't come out until chapter 3. But neither one of them conceived and had kids under that marriage. And another thing we'll see as we go through this is, and you'll see it throughout the rest of Scripture, that it's God who opens and closes wombs.
Mhm.
You know, so that could have been going on there as well. So because she didn't have kids,
Didn't think about that.
so in our case, if I were to pass away, then the oldest son
Well, any of the children, the oldest, back in this culture, yes.
Would have
the
been,
oldest son would
yes.
have been the one.
who would have been responsible
Take care.
to take care of it. And if that didn't happen, then go ahead, Casey.
I was just gonna say that in these times, that's why God really emphasized caring for the widows and orphans, you know, because they were on their own. You know, women didn't work.
Right.
They were literally dependent on that, you know, on a male relationship, if you will, to provide for them. So God, you know, made it very clear that was, you know, these successions, just like if, you know, my brother dies and his wife is left, I'm supposed to take her to be my wife, because so that she's being cared for. But it's hard for us sometimes to think like this because, you know, today there's so much independence. It's not quite, you know, it's not, but in these days it was absolutely essential, or they were destitute pretty quickly.
Plus they frown on having 2 wives now.
What's that?
They frown on
Yeah, they
having
frown on
2
having
wives.
more than one wife, yeah.
Well, unless you live somewhere else.
Oh, there's often
Okay, guys.
Connie says, would you want to wives?
Yeah, no.
Clay says, I don't want any wives.
So how does Christ fit into this at all? Or does he?
Well, if you're looking at the man as a redeemer, a kinsman redeemer, Christ is our redeemer. I mean, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Boaz has already taken a notice of her. There was no, at first, there was no, you know, I'd like to have her. He was just being a kind man and taking care of her in ways that he would not need to have done. I mean, he fed her, he said, if you want shelter, go to this shelter. I'm not gonna let my young men bother you at all. And stay with the women and they'll help you. So he was already looking out for her before.
Well, he knew her reputation that she had come.
Yes.
Yeah, what's
He
that?
was, yeah.
Yeah, part of what the scripture says here is that Boaz had real knowledge of who Naomi was.
Right, she knew that she
and
had showed loyalty to his,
Yes,
yeah, to his
yes,
relative
yes.
like that. So his kindness, Sam was right. You know, you're inclined to think, you know, she obviously was a very attractive woman. That's the, you know, we can kind of derive that. But I think his initial kindness was that it wasn't, oh, she's a good looking woman, I'm going to be nice to her. It was by reputation. He wanted to show her honor too for what she had done.
Because we also notice reading in chapter 3 here and beyond that he wasn't the next in line, right?
Right.
You know, so there was another who was closer who would have been obligated to step up had he wanted to, you know. But one thing that jumps out to me there too is that times change, people don't. Boaz still had the need to give orders to the young men. Don't even think about, you know, touching her, you know. And that's a little glimpse into what do we learn about human nature? Well, that's a glimpse in it right there, you know, that don't go to other fields, you know. There's risk in doing that, you know, and then stay here. And then, you know, he gives orders to the young men.
And being a
That's
foreign,
one thing I noticed. No, that's one thing I noticed in this too, is that he was watching out for her because he knows, you know, what bad things could have happened to her. And he did that because of what she did for his relatives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that
I see Boaz being a provider and Christ being a waymaker.
Boaz being a provider, Christ being a waymaker. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, what's the waymaker? I don't know.
He
Oh, like,
He provided a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Oh,
facilitated
things
a
to come
certain way
together.
for things to end up the way they did.
So it could come back to the verse that says, a man plans his steps, the Lord directs his path, right?
Right.
Naomi, the circumstances were such that brought her back there. They were planning their steps, but you get a real picture of here how the Lord does say, no, not that way, this way, you know?
Mhm.
And he does the same thing today for us,
Right.
by the way.
This is an example of too, of how the Lord laid out for the poor to be able to glean fields.
Mhm.
That you were to leave a little portion of what you harvested along the edges so that they could come and have be able to eat. So, there was an emphasis on looking out for the poor. In those days too, people that were, probably not in the right, like we would say, mental retardation or other, who couldn't work. They needed to have some ability. So God had commanded people to be generous when they were asking for alms. When they were begging on the street, if you knew the situation, you were supposed to give, because for some of them they couldn't get a job. It would have been impossible. It's a little. I mean, today we have a kind of a different dynamic. I know it's not so. It doesn't seem like it fits quite so easily. When you pass a poor person on the street, but in Israel it was absolutely essential, and a foreigner too. Even now, foreigners couldn't worship with Israel. They couldn't, unless they were going to go through quite a process. But there were some limitations. So her situation would have been very dangerous. Being a foreigner, she had no real protection. So the young men could have just they may have just taken advantage of her. She's just a foreign woman, big deal. She's not an Israelite. So they wouldn't have touched an Israelite woman. I'll be honest with you, because might have cost them a lot, or even their lives. But she was vulnerable, and he knew that. So
Thought percolating in there, you wanted to?
late today.
I was just thinking that Boaz was doing like Christ does for us before we're a Christian. He
Yeah.
draws,
Yeah.
provides, he does so many things. And then it kind of parallels, not exactly, because it just breaks down somewhere along the line. But here he's drawing her, not that he's even thinking about her as far as a wife, but he's being kind and providing.
But you do see the gospel here if you're looking at it, because historically speaking, the Jewish calendar, the 7 feasts that they celebrate, is kind of a timetable of God's events. The first 3 have taken place, which are in the spring of the year. The time that we're in right now in the world is known as the time of harvest, when whosoever will may come. Okay? And this is the time of harvest also. But we are the foreigners and the strangers that whosoever will may come. Right? And Christ is, like Vicki says, our Redeemer, but he has made allowance for, Jesus wept over Jerusalem. He came to his own received him not. And we should be, in a sense, thankful for that. Because his own didn't receive him that we might. And now we're grafted in, adopted. So we're accounted for right here in Ruth, if you see the whole gospel story. And anything else, Clay? What jumps out at you in chapter 2? Anything?
Pretty much what everybody else has said. They just said it before I did.
Well,
I
you
could
start
rephrase it
next.
if you want.
You will start the next time.
Yes. Right. All right. Well, let's read on to, through chapter 3 here. Is it your turn, Sam, or is it mine? Sam's?
Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz our kindred, and whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thyself, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. But make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have finished eating and drinking. And it shall be when he lieth down that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie. And thou shalt go in and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. And she said to her, All that thou sayest unto me I will do.
Then she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law had charged her to do. After Boaz had ate, drank, and was in good spirits, he went to lie down at the end of a pile of barley, and she came secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. At midnight, Boaz was startled, turned over, and there was lying at his feet was a woman. So he asked, Who are you? I am Ruth, your servant, she replied. Take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer. Then he said, May the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before, because you could have pursued a younger man, whether rich or poor.
And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request. For all that the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman. Now it is true that I am a close relative. However, there is a relative closer than I. Stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good. Let it be. But if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty for you. As the Lord lives, lie down until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, and she arose before one could recognize another. Then he said, Do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Also he said, Bring the shawl that is on you and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 ephahs of barley and laid it on her. Then she went into the city.
And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, How did you fare, my daughter? Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, These 6 measures of barley he gave to me. For he said to me, You must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. She replied, Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today.
Love that. What jumps out to you all?
Well, one thing about Ruth, she was a worker.
Yep. She
You
was.
know, that's in chapter 2 also. She worked.
This is a very ungodly thought, but it just came to me.
Here,
So we have a mind
let me
voice.
stand in front of the screen.
That it was a good thing that they wore sandals back then, because if they wore sneakers and she uncovered his feet, can you imagine she would have had to lay there thinking all night long, man, this guy's feet stink.
Yeah, I had that thought when they were saying, oh my gosh, I wouldn't be able to sleep by my feet. Ugh.
Now, isn't that a spiritual thought?
Yes, so much.
Sorry.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're not.
You're right. Any other thoughts that come out?
Well, with being a worker, she's also very obedient.
Okay.
She obviously loved her mother-in-law. That's pretty obvious through this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
What sticks out to me is Boaz is truly a God-fearing man because he does the right thing. He could have taken advantage of the situation. He could have, not went to the nearest kinsman. He's doing the right thing the entire time. That's what sticks out to me.
I feel that he was generous by giving her the barley to take back to Naomi.
Mhm. Very,
Yeah, looking out for the mother-in-law too, in other words.
yes.
She's probably not able to be out gleaning, but making sure she's taken care of.
Mhm. I love, I can't say enough good about the value of women, really, and what women add to the church, what women add to a community, a society. The Proverbs 31 woman, the last half of that, talks about all that a God-fearing woman does. And I even see that here. But how this ends, it comes to verse 16, and when she got to her mother-in-law, Naomi, said, well, what happened? Sit down, tell me all about it. And then, she had the wherewithal to say, now, just be patient. This will be settled before day's end. He's not going to let this rest. He's going to go to the gate, but she knows all this stuff, because women do, it's soft power, I call it, but to me, it's the value of a woman in a relationship. And here's just an example of it as well. But women, they see the details. They take care of things, and to me, that just an example here too of how Naomi does that. She knows all the right things. They know how community works. They know how people work. They just do the right things. Go here at the right time.
Seems a bit prophetic at the beginning. When
Pathetic?
yes, prophetic.
Oh, prophetic.
When at the beginning she says, he will tell you what to do. And then later in the chapter, he gives her the instructions.
Do you think that's part of the Jewish custom?
What?
The way it was, Naomi knew what was expected in the,
Right, exactly.
and then Boaz telling her, this is what we need to do.
We're not aware if Naomi knew about the other closer relative or not.
No, but
She is sort of, if you will, imposing on the obligation is the way I would look at it. She's saying, there's an obligation. It's kind of interesting, the Redeemer too, that family member, they were also called upon to avenge the murder of a family member. They would have to be the one to go and kill the person who murdered their family member. There was more to it than something, just the women. They had to buy back property that would be sold. They had to buy back relatives that were sold into slavery. Slavery then was more like a servitude. You were poor, you had nothing else you could do. You gave yourself as an indentured servant to somebody. Now, every 7 years, that was supposed to be, you're supposed to be given the ability to go and work on your own by the end of it. But they would buy back somebody like that in their family. So they had a lot of responsibility.
I'm not so sure this applied completely though here because she was a foreigner.
But, yeah, that might be true. That'd be true.
I think he did the right thing in this,
Right.
but I don't know that he was
Obligated.
as much as if she was a Jewish person, then he would have been. But since she wasn't, I think that even shows more of Christ likeness.
You mean as in Ruth being a foreigner?
Correct.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that he didn't want anyone to know that she was there. He didn't
I
want
was thinking
to.
that too.
He didn't want her persona ruined. Like, didn't want to have anybody have any talk about her.
Mhm. Yeah, that's another glimpse into his character. That's true.
And that kind of
it does mention too, though, that in a sense, she was making a marriage proposal to Boaz. I mean, she was the one. So, guess women do ask men to marry them.
Well,
It's kind of, kind of relates to when Joseph didn't want to make an example of Mary.
put her away privately. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else before we finish this up with chapter 4?
Do you think that, he was just being respectful to Ruth because of Naomi? I mean, all she did with it, and all the time spent with Naomi and coming back with them.
Understand what people say.
Things like that.
She's talking about
So she was, kind of
how Spit took time with
special notice because of Naomi.
because Ruth took care
Is that a question or you just
Boaz.
throwing that out there?
It's kind of a question, but throwing it out there. I mean, that's kind of what I was seeing, is that she's found favor because of who she was with. I mean, who she's cared for and stayed with, and,
I think that's true.
she just kind of found favor.
And it's also because of her character.
Right, yeah. I mean, she's living what she's doing and caring for Naomi. I mean, that's just.
You notice there's no mention of anybody marrying Naomi. She's coming along for the ride, though. I think she knew that all along. So you're not so sure that Boaz isn't thinking too in terms of she is a relative that would need to be taken care of. So if to take care of her was to marry the daughter-in-law, who even though was a foreigner, but was he mentions her reputation was impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
She was a good woman, and everybody in Bethlehem knew it. So she wasn't a foreigner in the sense that she worshipped other gods. She remember earlier she said, "I'm going to go and your God is going to be my God."
Mm-hmm.
So I think she fit right in. But I do think there is that residual obligation to Naomi, who probably wasn't of marrying age, but somebody was going to have to take care of her.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, Ruth is.
Right. So Selena, would you like to start chapter 4?
So Boaz went to the town gate and took a seat there. When the family redeemer he had mentioned came by, Boaz called out to him, "Come over here, friend. I want to talk to you." So they sat down together. Then Boaz called 10 leaders from the town and asked them to sit as witnesses. And Boaz said to the family redeemer, "You know Naomi, who came back from Moab. She is selling the land that belonged to our relative, how do you say his name? Elimelech. I felt that I should speak to you about it so that you can redeem it if you wish. If you want the land, then buy it here in the presence of these witnesses. But if you don't want it, let me know right away, because I am next in line to redeem it after you." The man replied, "All right, I'll redeem it." Then Boaz told him, "Of course, your purchase of the land from Naomi also requires that you marry Ruth, the Moabite widow. That way she can have children who will carry on her husband's name and keep the land in the family."
Verse 6.
Yeah.
At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself," and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech. I'm going to butcher this one too, Killian.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Malon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses.
Casey,
Oh,
starting verse 11.
I was just waiting for you to
You're
start
skipping
reading.
me.
Yeah. Verse 11, right?
Mhm.
Okay, verse 11. Oh,
It's right after 10.
And all the people who were at the gate, and the elder said, "We are witnesses. The Lord made the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, the two who built the house of Israel. And may you prosper in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem. May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman." It's kind of interesting. They're assuming they're going to have an offspring. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel, and may he be your restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has borne him."
Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David.
It's better than a Hallmark movie.
Amen.
Yeah. It's such a good story, though. Several things pop out to me that probably are different than some of the things that might pop out to you. It starts right out in verse 1. He went to the gate. And that was very much a cultural. That's where all the elders of a city went. Typically, the city was structured so that people coming in and out of the city would go through the gate. And they would know foreigners, strangers coming in. But that was like the hub of the city. What happened at the gate where elders were discussing all these things. So that's where he went to, take care of the business of the day. That's kind of the first thing that really pops out to me.
It was kind of like the courthouse area.
It was kind of like the courthouse. Legal stuff that took place, they would sit in judgment there. It was kind of like the courthouse. Go ahead and jump out as I'm looking for the other thing. Jump in, I should say. I'm looking for the other
He
thing.
wanted witnesses.
Yeah.
Make sure everything's done right. These guys are gonna hear it, and they're gonna hear both sides and what the decision is.
And I noticed that the nearer Redeemer was all in for taking the land and everything else until he found out that he had to take Ruth as well.
He had to care for other people.
Yeah, why do you suppose that is?
She was a burner. He didn't want to risk.
Well, I think he mentioned about the jeopardy. Oh, I'm sorry.
He was it. Said he didn't want to risk his own.
Inheritance. Well, what do you think he meant by that? What risk would have there been to him?
He may have already had children.
Yeah.
It doesn't say. Maybe he already had children and he just didn't want children from another wife.
Oh, yeah. Beth, you've finished studying the book of Ruth. Was there any thought that came up in regards to that in your study?
I mean, about the the
The-
first note
yes.
saying, no, I don't want it.
Yes.
I don't know, because we didn't really discuss that in our Bible study, but I think maybe because he was already married,
Mm-hmm.
she might be jealous and maybe would not work out very well to bring home a beautiful lady. I don't
I
know.
can't see that being a problem.
Ah.
I know you would know.
My notes say that buying the field for, well, it would be a double financial burden
Mhm.
by buying the field for Ruth's heir rather than for his own,
Ah.
and providing for Ruth and her family.
Mm.
Yeah, there was a risk, a financial risk
Mm.
to it. And he didn't want to take that because then it would have left, it might have left his family out of inheritance too. I think that was what was going on.
Yeah,
Because he
probably
couldn't-
so.
It wasn't selfish so much as, he made a good, he's thinking of his own family. He wants to make sure he's leaving something for them. If he takes on this additional obligation, it might have been too much for him. Whereas for Boaz, it being, our impression is he's quite wealthy. So it would have been of no.
And it didn't sound like he's married.
I was just gonna ask.
Yeah,
you.
well, yeah.
That's what
Right.
it said in here.
That's why he was wealthy,
He said, he didn't think Boaz was married. That's probably why he was so wealthy.
I don't spend years with him as he does.
Boy, I'm telling you, it's gonna be a long walk home. son.
I take
For me,
far.
Oh, that's funny.
The thing that jumped out at me was the whole sandal thing. I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of, but I mean, obviously it was
A
part
cultural
of their
thing.
cultural
Yeah.
thing, you know. But I thought that was kind
So I
of.
guess what happened after he gave him the sandal? Did he just keep it? So he got walk
Was he
home?
gonna sandal back?
What is one sandal?
I also take from the sandal
Signing
thing
of a
that the
contract.
sandal, the
That's the
sandal
way
is
they,
of great value because they walked everywhere. That's,
I don't know. Why do you suppose the
Yeah,
sandal
why?
was the sign of, rather than a handshake or something? Why do you suppose?
COVID.
I was thinking the same thing. COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Oh, handshake.
So what my notes say is handing over the sandal symbolizes handing over the right of redemption to Boaz, like signing on the dotted line.
and handing over his right to walk on the land. He's handing over his right to walk on the land that was being sold.
Oh, that makes
Dude.
Oh,
sense.
that's kind of
It's, I've been going back and forth with a lot of the symbolism I see going on right now, the kneeling and things. And I have to admit, I've been a little critical. Like, what's the big deal? So you kneel. But then I'm seeing that there's a lot of symbolism here too.
Mhm.
So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. That there is something about that, because you could say, well, why can't we just say, hey, it's done, we agree and move on? But the symbolism has a significance, even in the Bible. So,
it could have simply been done with a handshake.
yeah. See, they were concerned about COVID-19 back then.
Sam
It's
already
also
said
a-
that, sorry.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get up here, Sam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, dear.
You're welcome. I got a couple extra.
Then it's interesting now that they go through whoever wrote the book of Ruth, then they go and they make sure that you understand what the significance of marrying Boaz was,
Yeah.
the genealogy.
Right.
Right.
Her son is the great grandfather of David.
David.
Great
Father, grandfather.
grandfather.
Let's run through our.
He would be the
let's run-
great grandfather of David. He was the father. Grandfather. You're right.
Let's run through our interesting facts sheet
Oh,
here,
okay, sure.
which all good theologians, go to Google, right? That's what I did. I went to Google.
Yes, I do. I
And
didn't.
found this and printed it off. But this is just kind of give us an overview of interesting facts about it. Observations. Ruth is a story of love, devotion, redemption set in the days of Judges. Basically, it is the story of a Moabite woman who forsakes her pagan heritage in order to cling to the people of Israel. Because of her faithfulness in a time of national unfaithfulness, God rewards her by giving her a new husband, Boaz, a son of Obed, and a privileges position in the lineage of David in Christ. So Ruth is the great grandmother of David. Boaz brings a Moabite woman into the family line of David and eventually of Christ. The book of Ruth is divided into 4 distinct settings. The first setting was the country of Moab. The second is a field in Bethlehem. Third was the threshing floor in Bethlehem. And fourth was the city of Bethlehem. Ruth is a virtuous woman. Love is demonstrated in chapters 1 and 2 and rewarded in chapters 3 and 4. That's kind of interesting. Kinsman redeemer means one who redeems, and that appears 13 times in the book of Ruth. Buying back the land of Naomi, as well as marrying Ruth and fathering a son to keep the family line alive, Boaz acts as a redeemer. And that is outlined in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. So in 22 short verses, Ruth moves from widowhood and poverty to marriage and wealth. Orpah chooses to leave Naomi and is never mentioned again in the Bible, which is interesting. The meanings of names in the book of Ruth. Elimelech, God is my king. Naomi means pleasant. Mara, which is what Naomi said, change my name to Mara, means bitter. Malon means sick. Chilon means pining. So that's pretty close to what you said, Beth.
I thought it was sick and weak. What
Sick
did you
and
say?
weak. Pining would be weak, wouldn't it? I think.
Wouldn't pining be a person who finds a subject or a topic and just stirs on it, just continually dwells on one thing until
Pining
it,
on it. Yeah, that could be.
So just a whiny kid.
there you go.
Ruth means friendship. Orpah means stubbornness. Boaz means in his strength. In Bethlehem is house of bread. So Ruth's vow in chapter 1, 16, 17, where she said, entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. Wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more so, if anything but death parts you and me. Interesting.
So looking up pining in the dictionary, it says to lose vigor, health, or flesh. As through grief. Or
So her two
to
sons were
yearn
just kind of weak.
intensely and persistently,
Sick
especially
guys.
for something unattainable.
Yeah. The second that, yeah.
Pining away. I remember this one. You would say, versus
Right.
pining away their life.
But it shows you,
What is that all about?
Well, we'll talk about it.
please do, I have no clue.
Either-
No, I was just thinking that that's why it's important to understand the culture, the way it was done. Is that the way it's done today in that culture, or do they have lawyers and do it legally like we do it? I mean, I've never been to the whole Bethlehem, so I don't know how it's done today, but
I can only imagine that they have lawyers.
you don't think they handle the sandal over to them and crack the whip?
Or to stick your hand under the thigh, like with Isaac.
Mhm.
Isaac and Jacob, and
Yeah. Right,
that was how they performed their vow.
right,
It seems strange to us,
right.
or a blessing.
But see, for us, it makes it richer, gives us a deeper understanding of what God is teaching us. Whereas some people say, Bible doesn't apply today because we don't live like that today. But God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So
That's right.
whatever.
We know that Ruth had no idea what was gonna happen to her, none whatsoever, but her faith, if we can call it that, her faith produced so much in her life.
Mhm.
I have a question,
Yes.
and I think I might know the answer. So, when Naomi took the child and to nurse him, or to be the nurse to him, the neighbor woman said that Naomi now has a son. Is that because they're looking at that child being a part of Naomi's family, like one of her sons, even though it came through Ruth?
Mhm.
Is that confusing?
No,
No, I understand what you're saying.
And quite often,
And more than, other than saying a grandson, but just because they're all family.
yeah, quite often in the Bible, you'll see it referred to maybe a person farther down the line as the son, or even farther up the line as the father.
Hmm.
It's just the way it's written, but it's, the meaning is there that, yeah, it's not the actual father, but it was a forefather, or a son, not the actual son, but it is like Jesus is called David's son.
But you have the picture of redemption again there in that Naomi, remember she changed her name to bitter, but see now she's been restored. She has a son who she has an inheritance with. I mean, in terms of her posterity, she has somebody to take care of her in her old age, so to speak. All those things that she had lost before have been restored to her.
Mhm.
So throughout the whole, but for me, it's just exciting to see, again, this is proof positive that the plan of salvation was in place perfectly and nothing was going to change it. God was looking toward that time when Christ to come. Everything, all of humanity is waiting for that.
Mhm.
That's how important it is.
Very.
That's who we get together on Sunday and worship, by the way. I tap my leg.
Would you like to close us in prayer?
I can try. Father, yes, wow, just amazing, absolutely amazing. But what can we say but thank you? Thank you that right from the get-go, you planned our redemption. You were going to buy us back with an awful price, just a terrible price of Christ's life, his death on the cross. But you made this happen, Lord, and all these things we see it. And it just shows how incredible it is that you desire this relationship with us. And so when you found us, Lord, when you reached out to us, when you made the things such that we would see you and believe in you and trust you, Lord, we were so blessed. Thank you for this. And I just pray for each one around this table tonight that you would surely, Lord, let them know that you are their God and that they are too a people, and we are a community, Lord. We're not independent agents. We're not individuals in the sense that we're on our own. We're together in this, and we're part of the same family. And we share a Father, a Heavenly Father, you. Thank you. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Would you care to shut that off? I like how the end of the book ends up too, saying the women of the neighborhood all said, "Oh, Naomi's fulfilled." You know,